It started on a sweltering summer day in a dimly lit industrial plant, the kind of place where the air hung heavy with the scent of rust and desperation, and temporary workers like us shuffled through the shadows like ghosts in a forgotten machine. I was 19, fresh out of high school, scraping by on temp gigs that paid just enough to keep the lights on in my cramped apartment. The job was simple: inventory in the bowels of the building, counting crates in the dark basement levels where fluorescent bulbs flickered like dying fireflies, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to whisper warnings. That's where I first noticed him, the creepy white guy, mid-40s, with skin so pale it glowed sickly under the lights like he'd never seen the sun. He wore aviator glasses straight out of a bad 70s cop movie, perched on a bald head that gleamed with sweat, and his eyes, oh God, those eyes, darted around like a predator sizing up wounded prey. He was built like a forgotten sack of flour, clammy and awkward, but there was something rapacious in his gait, a deliberate slowness that made the hairs on my neck stand up. We were paired off for the day, temps thrown together like kindling in a fire pit, and fate, or the indifferent hand of the temp agency, put him with her. A young Mexican woman who'd just arrived from across the border, her English as sparse as the sunlight down there. She was 21, maybe, with smooth brown skin, long dark hair tied back in a practical ponytail, and wide, trusting eyes that scanned the room for safety. She spoke no English, only rapid-fire Spanish that echoed off the concrete walls like pleas to an uncaring God. He volunteered to partner with her, his voice dripping with false chivalry as he sidled up, blocking her path to anyone else, his grin stretching too wide, revealing yellowed teeth. The on-site boss, a harried man with a clipboard and zero patience for drama, shrugged it off, no time for translations or switches. So off they went into the labyrinthine depths, her small frame swallowed by the gloom, his hulking shadow trailing like a noose. The hours dragged on, the basement's chill seeping into our bones, broken only by the distant hum of machinery that sounded like labored breathing. Lunchtime came, and we all crammed into the break room, a fluorescent-lit cage with vending machines that spat out stale snacks. She sat alone at first, picking at a sandwich, her eyes downcast, but he plopped down beside her uninvited, launching into a monologue she couldn't comprehend. He yammered on about nothing, whether football, his collection of old records, his voice a low, insistent drone that filled the space like smoke. She nodded politely, murmuring she. Every few seconds, her discomfort growing as he inched closer, his knee brushing hers under the table. Then it happened. His hand, thick-fingered and veined like twisted roots, reached out and began stroking her arm, slow circles that started at her elbow and crept upward. She recoiled like she'd been burned, jerking away with a sharp intake of breath, her Spanish protest tumbling out in a frantic rush. But he just chuckled, a wet guttural sound that slithered through the room. Everyone saw it. We were all there, crammed shoulder to shoulder, but silence fell like a shroud. Temps like us, we were disposable, ghosts who vanished if we caused a ripple. No one moved, no one spoke, eyes averted, sandwiches forgotten. I saw the fear bloom in her eyes, raw and animal, her body tensing as if bracing for a blow. The basement work demanded isolation. We'd all venture off alone into side rooms, pitch-black alcoves where screams would echo unheard. She tried to switch partners later, approaching a group of us in hushed, desperate Spanish, but he intercepted, his face darkening, whispering threats about going to the boss and how she'd lose the gig she so desperately needed. Money was her chain, binding her to this hell, so she relented, her shoulders slumping as they disappeared back into the dark. End of shift hit like a mercy, the plant emptying out as battered vans from the temp agency rumbled up to ferry us back to the staging lot, 20 miles away. Side of the staging lot, 20 miles. But something was off. One less vehicle today. The drivers barking about tight schedules. The minivan filled first, then the full-size one, bodies piling in like sardines, leaving me, the last straggler from the far end of the plant, stranded in a gravel lot, phone dying, no cash for a cab. Panic clawed at my throat. My mom was 45 minutes away in Elkhart, and the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in bloody streaks. Then he appeared, keys jingling like mocking bells, offering a ride with that same oily grin. Van's full? No problem. Me and her'll take you. She was there too, materializing from the shadows, her face a mask of terror, eyes pleading silently as she clutched her bag like a shield. He insisted she take the front seat, his tone brooking no argument, and I slid into the back, exhaustion numbing my instincts. The car smelled of stale cigarettes and something sharper, metallic. Fear, maybe. He peeled out, the engine growling like a beast, and for 10 minutes, silence reigned, broken only by the radio's static hiss. I dozed, lulled by the rhythm, but a sixth sense yanked me awake. There he was, one hand off the wheel, groping her thigh, fingers digging in as she slapped them away, her body twisted against the door, whispering frantic prayers in Spanish. What the fuck are you doing? I exploded, lunging forward, and he swerved, tires screeching, nearly kissing the guardrail. She whimpered, tears streaking her face as he stammered excuses. Just checking if she's okay, but his eyes in the rear view were feral, promising retribution. The drive became a taut wire, every mile a gamble. She reclined her seat, arms crossed protectively over her chest and lap, but he wasn't done. His free hand snaked up, threading through her hair in what he called comfort, pulling strands loose until she flinched. What the fuck is your problem? I snarled, voice shaking with rage. She's fine. Keep your hands on the wheel, or I swear. She didn't understand the words, but the venom in my tone cut through. She met my gaze in the mirror, a silent alliance forged in that hellish capsule. We hit the temp office lot at dusk, the building a squat bunker under sodium lights that buzzed like angry wasps. He cornered her there, blocking her path to her beat-up sedan, pressing for her number in a voice thick with entitlement. Come on, chica, just a coffee, as if the hours of violation entitled him to more. I couldn't watch. Fury boiled over, and I grabbed her arm gently, mangling Spanish, Adondes tu caro, leading her away while mugging at him with fists clenched, daring him to follow. He froze, finally, his facade cracking into something ugly and impotent, as she fled to her car, tires spinning gravel in her wake. I stood there, heart pounding, realizing how close it had come. A rape in broad twilight, thwarted by a stranger's intervention in a world that chewed up the vulnerable and spat out bones. That night, sleep evaded me, haunted by her eyes, his hands, the basement's endless dark. I never saw either again, but the plant's shadows linger in my dreams, a reminder that monsters don't always lurk in alleys. They clock in at 8 a.m., punch out with a smile, and drive you home to hell. The warehouse was a cavernous beast, a steel and concrete maw that swallowed men whole under the relentless assault of forklifts and pallet jacks, where the air reeked of diesel fumes and desperation, and safety protocols were as flexible as rusted chains. It was a Friday afternoon in the dead of winter, the kind of cold that seeped through concrete floors and numbed your marrow, when our boss, let's call him Mike, a burly guy in his 40s with a salt and pepper beard and eyes that had seen too many close calls, decided to oversee the loading dock personally. Mike wasn't the type to micromanage. He trusted his crew, a ragtag band of lifers and temps who'd bonded over shared cigarettes and grizzled tales of near misses. Among them was Tony, a wiry vet in his late 30s, quick with a joke but slower with his reactions after too many overtime shifts. Tony was backing up his forklift that day, a yellow behemoth loaded with a towering pallet of engine parts destined for shipment across state lines, its diesel engine rumbling like a chained dragon. The dock was chaos incarnate, forklifts crisscrossing like dueling knights, loaders shouting over the din, crates teetering on edges that begged for disaster. Mike was mere feet away, clipboard in hand, barking orders to clear a path for the next truck, when Tony misjudged his reverse. Maybe it was the glare off the icy windows, or the fatigue from 18 hours straight, or just the cruel lottery of fate. But the forklift's rear tire caught Mike's arm against a shipping container. A massive blue monolith bolted to the floor. The crunch was unholy, a wet snap that cut through the noise like a guillotine's fall, followed by Mike's guttural roar that echoed off the rafters, freezing everyone in tableau. Blood erupted in a geyser, arterial spray painting the concrete in vivid crimson arcs, splattering Tony's face in overalls as he leaped from the cab, pale as death. Mike's arm, his right, the one he used to hug his kids and crack open beers, hung by a flap of skin and tendon, the bone cleanly sheared at the elbow, white shards glinting amid the red ruin. It dangled there, twitching involuntarily, while Mike staggered back, shock etching his features into a mask of disbelief, his free hand clutching uselessly at the stump as if prayer could reknit flesh. Jesus, Mike. Oh, God, no. Tony wailed, dropping to his knees in the pooling blood. which spread like accusation, soaking his jeans to the skin. The crew surged forward then, a human tide breaking the paralysis. Someone killed the forklift's engine, another grabbed shop rags from a nearby bench, twisting them into a makeshift tourniquet. But Mike, ever the leader even in agony, waved them off with his good hand, growling through gritted teeth. "Get the arm, ice it. For fuck's sake." He collapsed against the container, legs buckling as the life pulsed out of him in rhythmic jets, drenching his flannel shirt until it clung like a second skin, heavy and sodden. The metallic tang hit the air, thick and coppery, invading nostrils and throats. One loader retched into a crate, the sound a pathetic counterpoint to Mike's labored breaths. Paramedics arrived in a blur of sirens and flashing lights, firefighters in tow with hoses and medkits, transforming the dock into a triage war zone. They clamped the wound with professional detachment, the tourniquet biting deep into his bicep, stemming the flow to a sluggish seep, while a brave soul, young temp kid, barely 20, scooped up the severed limb, cradling it like a fallen comrade, wrapping it in a clean tarp and packing it in a cooler scavenged from the break room. Mike, delirious now, cracked dark humor through the pain. Tell the wife it's workers' comp. New prosthetic, fancy one. But his eyes, glassy with shock, betrayed the terror. He could feel the phantom twitches, the void where his hand should be. The firefighters hosed him down right there, high-pressure streams blasting away the gore, turning pink rivers down the drains, but it was futile. His mustache and goatee were matted crimson, blood trickling into his mouth. The taste lingering like rust on the tongue, a flavor he'd carry for weeks. Tony, catatonic beside him, kept muttering apologies, his hands trembling as he wiped futilely at the stains on his face. The weight of what he'd done carving lines into his young features overnight. Mike survived the ambulance ride, the endless rehab that followed. A blur of grafts, pins, and physical therapy that left him with a claw hand, fingers that curled but never fully gripped again. He couldn't hug his daughter without wincing, couldn't grill burgers on weekends without adaptive tools that mocked his old life. The warehouse paid out a settlement, fat and impersonal, but money didn't erase the nightmares. Tony's haunted stare every shift, the way the dock's shadows seemed to pulse with remembered blood. Tony quit months later, haunted by guilt, drifting into odd jobs where machinery couldn't touch him. As for Mike, he returned to work part-time, lighter duties, but the crew whispered of his moods, the way he'd freeze at the sound of a reversing engine, tasting blood anew. That accident bonded us in blood, a scarlet pact, but it also fractured souls. In the quiet hours when the warehouse exhaled its daytime frenzy, you'd hear it. The phantom crunch, the spray, the roar, and know that some horrors don't sever just limbs. They amputate trust, leaving you forever half a man in a world of whirring blades. In the glass towers of corporate America, where deals were sealed over martinis and betrayals hid behind PowerPoint slides, our office was a pressure cooker of ambition and rot. The kind of place where success tasted like ash and failure invited the wolves. I was the mid-level analyst buried in spreadsheets when I uncovered it. The CEO, Evelyn, a sleek predator in Chanel suits and Louboutins, her smile a scalpel, had been siphoning company funds, $2 million funneled into offshore accounts masked as consulting fees. It started with a discrepancy in the Q3 reports, a nagging anomaly that kept me up nights, cross-referencing ledgers until the truth clawed its way out, like a buried corpse. Whistleblowing wasn't bravado, it was survival, a Hail Mary to the board that triggered FBI suits swarming the executive floor, badges flashing like judgments. Evelyn's empire crumbled overnight. Raids, indictments, her name splashed across headlines as embezzling exec. But downfall doesn't come quiet. It festers, and Evelyn's unraveling was a symphony of spite that turned our workplace into a stalking ground. Her suicide attempt came first, a bottle of pills washed down with vintage scotch in her corner office, discovered by her assistant who found her slumped over her desk, foam at the lips, a scrawled note blaming the traitors. She survived, pumped clean, and remanded to psych eval, but emerged changed, not broken but sharpened into something venomous. Released on bail, she haunted the periphery, showing up unannounced in the lobby, her once polished hair now a wild tangle, eyes hollowed by rage, whispering to receptionists about burning it all down. We, the remaining staff, a skeleton crew of the loyal and the terrified, watched her circle like a vulture, her threats escalating from murmurs to voicemails left at odd hours. Speak one word against me, and your pretty little house goes up in flames. I know where you sleep. Paranoia infected us. Doors locked double time, blinds drawn against the parking lot where her black SUV idled, headlights piercing the night like accusatory fingers. Coworkers swapped stories in hushed huddles by the coffee machine. Sarah from accounting glimpsed Evelyn at her kid's soccer game, staring from the bleachers. Tom in sales found a dead rat on his doorstep, gutted and posed like a warning. The FBI dismissed it as post-arrest stress, but we knew better. Evelyn's reach was tendrils, woven through years of favors and files. Then the family imploded, a tabloid apocalypse that bled into our inboxes via anonymous leaks. Her son, 22 and Golden Boy heir apparent, arrested in a sting for raping a 16-year-old runaway he'd lured via social media. The details grotesque. Ducked, taped wrists, muffled screams in a motel off the interstate. Photos leaked, his smug mugshot juxtaposed with Evelyn's arraignment glare, turning our break room TV into a horror reel. Evelyn didn't crumble. She weaponized it, storming a board meeting, security lapsed as always, to shriek at us. You did this. Your lies destroyed my boy. Spittle flew, her manicured nails raking the air, and in that moment I saw the abyss. A mother unmoored, her empire reduced to vengeance. She stalked me hardest, the whistleblower, tires slashed in the garage, my wife's phone buzzing with blocked calls that breathed static threats. Nights blurred into vigilance. I'd jolt awake at shadows, convinced her silhouette lurked beyond the curtains. The office emptied by attrition, resignations disguised as relocations, leaving echoes in cubicles, the hum of empty fluorescence a dirge. Evelyn's trial loomed a guillotine date, but her presence lingered, a poltergeist in emails and whispers, reminding us that power's true horror isn't theft. It's the echo of what it corrupts, turning colleagues into suspects, trust into terror, and every closing elevator door into a potential trap.